So we'll be introducing Xian from Youth Advocates for Climate Action Philippines. He's one of the co-conveners for YACAP, and he's an advocate for climate awareness, climate justice, using STEM for volunteerism, and he's also arranged the largest human Earth formation in September 21, and he's currently focused on local organizing and also international collaborations. So let's give him a welcome.
All right. Thank you so much, Joaquim. All right. Hold on. I'll share my screen. Okay. Can you guys see it?
Yep, you're good.
All right. Okay. I'll start. Yeah. Hi, guys. Good evening. So basically, tonight I will talk about the role of the youth in climate justice. So this is presented by me. I am from YACAP, Youth Advocates for Climate Action Philippines. This is basically an organization and an alliance of different individuals, youth formations, and student councils across the Philippines that advocate for climate justice, urgent climate action, youth-led climate action, defense of environmental defenders, and system change. All right. So for today, there we go, this is the thing that we will be talking about. These are the things that we'll be talking about today. We want to answer these 4 questions. So first one is, who are the youth? Then we ask the question, why should the youth lead? And then what is climate justice and what can we do? So basically this talk is going to be an introductory course, since it's the first talk of the series, and hopefully this will give you guys a basic idea of what climate action and climate justice is, and us as the youth, what can we do about it. So the details will come in later for the other talk from the other talks. But yeah, let's start. I want you guys to ask me questions along the way if that is possible. You can either send it through chat or You can unmute yourselves. I don't know if that will work, but let's see. I also have the live on Facebook on my phone here. So if you guys for the people watching on Facebook, you can send your questions there as well, and I can try to answer those. All right, so let's start. So the first question is, who are okay? In the Philippines, the age that we are using is 15 to 30 years old. So this is defined by the Philippine Statistics Authority. But this definition, just the number 15 to 30 years old, might be a bit vague for some people. Na, bakit ang youth ay 15 lang? Bakit hindi pa din 14, 13? Or bakit hanggang 30 lang? Why not 31, 32? Because in other countries, uh, they consider people up to 35 as youth as well. So this is, for me personally, a better definition of what the youth is. So according to United Nations, youth is the period in life of transition from dependence of childhood to adulthood's independence. Okay, so it's that moment when you have a little bit of independence from your parents, wherein you can do things that you want that you don't necessarily have to ask permission from them, but also, I don't know, for in the Philippines, it's very common that we still live with our parents. So there's still some sort of dependence. So yeah, when we talk about the youth, this is it's quite vague actually, but I don't know. For me personally, it's a better terminology or better definition than just using numbers. So in the Philippines, the projected population of the Filipino youth in 2020, so that's this year, when it was presented by PSA in 2015, was 29,974,800. So this is how many we are. So sobrang dami ng youth dito sa Pilipinas. We're around a third of the population of the Philippines. That's why the youth is actually one of, I don't know, the biggest sectors in society. Okay? And we have to remember, though, that yes, the youth is a certain sector, but the youth actually comes from different classes and different sectors of societies. And a lot of a lot of the youth actually come from the basic sector. So in the Philippines, if you look at the demographics and the distribution of the population here in the Philippines, we have lots of farmers, lots of workers, and then as we go up the economic strata, the number of people becomes less and less. Okay, so if we take the youth part of those people, it's still a very big number. And following the trend of the population, the number of youth also follows that same trend. That the more youth actually comes from the basic sector. So what's the point of this one? So the main idea here is whenever we talk about the youth, we have to remember that the youth is not just us. Because there's, for some people, there's this problem that because we are in a state of privilege, so we assume that almost everyone else has the same footing as we are. So, for example, not everyone can access this Zoom call or this FB Live, all right? Because places in the Philippines don't actually have, some places in the Philippines don't actually have internet, or some places in the Philippines don't actually have electricity. So we have to remember that when we're talking about the youth, it encompasses from the poorest of the sectors to the richest of the sectors, all right? Okay, so the question is, why should the youth lead? And I want this to be quite interactive. So I want you guys to answer. For the people in the Zoom meeting, if you guys can answer it through chat, yeah, that would be great. Yeah. Okay. Does anyone know why should the youth lead? Whenever we talk about issues or, I don't know, anything, basically. Okay, according to Dave, we are digital natives. Okay, that's one thing. All right. Any more ideas? We are both present and the future of the world. Okay, that's nice too. Thanks, Jedrick. Anyone else? Okay, I want to hear. The youth is the future. Okay, so basically, you guys actually said the 2 points that. Oh, what happened? Why did it? Oop, next. Why is it not moving? There. Okay, so the 2 points on why I think the youth should lead. So first is we have the physical and the mental energy. Comparing us to like Gen Z, baby boomers or Gen X, we have more physical energy as as compared to them. All right, but in terms of mental energy, we also have the necessary skills, the necessary um, knowledge to arm ourselves in leading a movement, as opposed to, let's say, kids like 6 years old or 8 year olds. While they may have more physical energy, the mental energy is far greater in us as compared to them. So we have that good balance between the physical and the mental energy as youth. And the second one, and I don't know, probably one of the most important ones, is that we are the inheritors of the planet. So when we talk about climate, when we talk about the environment, yes, right now we are feeling the effects. Yes, right now we are feeling the stress and the crisis of the climate crisis, basically. But as we all know, the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, has already told us that if we do not change the way that we live in the next 10 years, it will lead to irreversible damage. So within the 10 years, yes, the other generations, the older generations can feel that as well. But the part wherein uh, the climate is actually destroying the earth, we are the ones who are going to feel that later on. So there is this saying that we do not want to inherit. We are the inheritors of the earth, but we don't want to inherit a burning planet or a sinking country. Because yeah, basically, um, we are the futures of this world. We are the ones who's going to sit in government positions, or we're going to have businesses of our own when we grow up. So yeah, basically, we are going to be the leaders of the future. So that's why right now, ngayon pa lang dapat meron na tayong initiative. Meron na dapat tayong ideas kung bakit ba natin ginagawa yung ginagawa natin. So note pala, I'm talking in both English and Filipino. I hope that's okay with everyone. Yeah. Okay. So now we go to the next point, which is climate justice. Because now we know what the youth is, and now we know why the youth should lead in the actions. Now, what is climate justice? Now, this term actually is quite common. Like you can hear it almost everywhere, especially when environmentalists are talking. But the question is, what is it exactly? If you guys are familiar with it, can you please share your thoughts about this on the chat? What is climate justice for you guys? Or if anyone wants to speak, that would be great. I love seeing people whenever we do meetings such as these. So yeah, if you guys have any idea what is climate justice, uh, hopefully you guys can send that. Okay. All right. Whenever uh the FB live, it has whenever you stream it, it has a delay. So I don't know if the people, if you guys are watching from FB or from the Facebook Live of Project Swap, you can also send in your answers, and it might be delayed, but hopefully I can read it all later. Okay, so since no one is chatting, I'll just continue. Okay, so what is climate justice? Climate justice is basically this: it's accountability from the countries, corporations, and people who are the main polluters of the planet. Okay, so accountability means you hold everyone that's at fault um, accountable. So, ibig sabihin, kung ikaw may ginawa kang masama, dapat meron kang accountability. Meron ka dapat gagawin about it. But, we all know, pag sinabi natin accountability, kung mas malaki yung ginawa mo, mas malaking mali yung ginawa mo, syempre mas malaki dapat yung actions na i-demand from you. So, for example, if you guys, I don't know, uh, if someone robbed the bank, syempre iba yung punishment na makukuha ng someone who actually robbed the bank versus someone who was on the street na nakita niya na may person na sketchy na lumalapit dun sa bank and didn't report it. Okay, so both have accountability, but of course, yung mas mabigat talaga na accountability at kung sino dapat yung managot ay yung nag-rob ng bank. So basically, that's the same idea when we talk about climate justice. Kung sino yung sumisira talaga sa environment, kung sino yung nagko-cause ng napakaraming carbon emissions, sila dapat yung may malaking action as opposed to the people na mas onti lang naman. Okay, so let's talk about these three things: the countries, corporations, and the people. So for the countries, historically, ang pinakamalaki na polluter ay USA. Pero currently, the biggest polluter is China. So pag sinabi natin historically, ito yung cumulative na carbon emissions nila from the time na first ni-record hanggang sa ngayon. Okay? And then yung current na biggest polluter, meaning at this current time, sino ba yung pinakamaraming, for example, this year, sino yung pinakamaraming carbon emissions? So if we look at the 2016 data of EDGAR, China produced 10.4 billion tons, okay, of greenhouse gases and of emissions. And then USA produced 5 billion tons. And the Philippines is only 127 million tons. So we might not understand how big of a difference these are. Like China versus US, that's like twice. Pero China versus the Philippines, guys, that's around 81 times. Okay? So ganun kalaki yung difference ng emissions na ginagawa ng China versus sa Philippines. So bakit ang yung burden ay napupunta sa ating Filipinos? Eh, di ba tayo, Philippines pa naman among the whole world is the second na most affected by the effects of climate change and the climate crisis. So we are bearing the burden, but we are not the main polluters. So that's one of the things na kailangan tignan when we say climate justice. Bakit yung mga tao na pinaka-apektado, parang hindi naman sila actually yung main na sumisira ng environment. But the people who actually destroy the environment, they are not the ones who are necessarily the ones most impacted by the effects of climate change. Now, when we talk about companies, this is something interesting as well. Between 1988 to 2015, only 100 companies were responsible for 71% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So this is from the Carbon Disclosure Project. So imagine, yung total na greenhouse gas emissions natin from 1988 to 2015, 71% nun. So that's a huge portion. That's more than half. Ay galing lang sa companies. Diba? So isn't it mind-boggling na people are always, parang napupunta lagi yung burden sa people na, dapat kayo vegan kayo, dapat vegetarian kayo, so you can reduce your carbon footprint. Dapat kayo, you should buy your own hydro flask or your own water bottles instead of using the plastic ones, diba? So yes, it has an effect, but we have to understand na yung responsibility ay hindi dapat mainly pinipit sa individuals. And speaking of individuals, let's talk about the people, the individuals itself. So titingnan na natin yung emissions from individual consumption. So ito na yung carbon footprint ng each and every person. So the 10%, the richest 10%, sila yung gumagawa ng 50% of emissions. Well, the 50% poorest, so that's 3.9 billion people, 10% lang yung emissions nila. So sobrang laki, di ba? Sobrang weird, no? Na bakit yung 10% na richest, sila yung sobrang daming emissions, tapos yung poorest, sila yung hindi naman sobrang dami ng emissions. So when we talk about, for example, when some people talk about sa shea economy, na inaaway yung mga mahihirap na, kasalanan nyo yung climate crisis kasi lagi kayong bumibili ng sachet imbes na bumili kayo ng bulk. Well, first thing is, hindi naman talaga nila afford ang bulk. Some people, for example, in the Philippines, they're living day to day, so hindi naman nila kaya talaga i-afford yung bulk na yon, 'di ba? And aside from that, kung titingnan din natin yung carbon footprint nila, 10% lang yung poorest 50%. So instead of talking about the sachet economy, I'm not saying that we don't talk about it, okay? Because we do. Pero if yung angle natin ng pag-hold ng people accountable ay against the poor, we might be making a mistake kasi they're not the ones na pinakamalaki talaga yung contribution. So kunyari, itong 50% poorest nga na to ay magbago sila ng lifestyle, di ba? Ang mangyayari lang, let's say, they cut it in half. Magiging 5% emissions na lang yung, like kung kunyari, if these are numbers, like over 100 emissions, magiging 5 na lang yung emissions nila. Yung 50%, yung 50 emissions pa rin ay same, di ba? So kasi hindi nga natin na-hold yung rich people accountable. So that's the main idea na when we talk about climate justice, it's holding the right people, the right corporations, and the right countries accountable. Okay? So yeah, basically now that we understand this idea, na meron tayong idea na okay, when we talk about climate, when we talk about the environment, yes, individual actions and individual changes will have an effect. Pero dapat yung main na inaaway talaga natin basically ay yung mga people nga na ganito, yung mga biggest contributors, hindi mo inaaway, but sa kanila ka magdedemand ng change, ng pagbabago when it comes to their practices. Kapag nakakalimutan nga natin yon na we focus on the individuals, we might not actually reach the deadline na binigay sa atin ng IPCC na within 10 years, makat natin yung global emissions natin by half. Okay? So, yeah, this is the question now. And then, dito na papasok kung ano na yung mga sasabihin ng following speakers ay, what can you actually do? Diba? Because this is the question na, I don't know, it's the pandemic, what can I do? Diba? So, I want to break it down into 3 simple things. When we talk about action, when we talk about the climate movement or any movement in general, there are 3 things that you should do. First is you inform, the second is you unite, and the third is you act. Okay, so first let's talk about inform. So what is inform? So for us, for climate activists, we talk about climate education. So this goes into many different aspects. So pwede kang mag-infographics. You can do webinars such as these. Pwede kang mag-release ng different pubs, ng different statements. Or pwede kang gumawa ng TikTok. I don't know, we are now in a time na like sobrang dami ng avenues to inform people. Okay? But we have to remember that information goes 2 ways. Okay? Dapat tayo rin iniintindi natin at inaalam din natin yung mga bagay-bagay. Because we are not all-knowing. Okay? Hindi natin 100% alam kung ano ba yung nangyayari sa buong mundo in the sense na we don't actually know what is happening in the countryside. Kunyari, indigenous peoples. Like we can have an idea on how it affects them, but it's still different na kapag narinig natin from them mismo or sa fisher folks or sa farmers. So dapat tayo rin ma-inform natin yung sarili natin from the basic sectors, tapos tsaka natin ini-inform din yung the rest of the world through different avenues. So remember na hindi lang to online, pwede rin tong offline. Right now in the pandemic though, medyo mahirap yung offline, but we make do with what we can. Okay? So the next one is unite. Okay, so when we talk about unite, it's joining organizations. Okay, so pag sinabi nating nag-join ka ng organizations, ibig sabihin nito ay nagmi-meet kayo ng people na same ideas. Okay, na meron kayong, na same kayo ng pinaglalaban, same kayo ng advocacies, para mas malinis yung plano nyo. Kasi, yun nga yung sinabi ko kanina, kung individual ka lang, diba, may limit kung ano yung magagawa mo as an individual. But if you guys join together and if you guys band together, mas malawak yung maaabot ng inyong bosses. Okay? So aside from joining organizations, other forms of unite is collaboration and partnerships. Kaya, kunyari ngayon, us partnering with SWAP and us partnering with different, organizations that have the same idea or have the same advocacies, diba? It's a form of uniting as well. Okay, so sabi ng mga dogs, unite behind the science. All right? And lastly is act. So when we say act, ito na yung mobilizing for the cause. Okay, so itong act, ito na yung pinakamarami, as in, sobrang dami mong pwedeng gawin when we say act. Okay, so pwede yung mag-lobby ka ng sa Congress, pwede kang gumawa, like, makipag-coordinate ka with the legal people, pwede kang gumawa ng petitions, signature campaigns, pwede kang mag-mobilize sa streets, di ba? Pwede kang mag-individualistic actions like yung pagbabawas nga ng carbon footprint mo. So that means lessening your meat intake, ensuring na, like trying your best na instead of buying paulit-ulit nga ng water bottles, you buy a reusable one instead. So sobrang dami at sobrang lawak ng aspect ng act. So I divided it into these things. So merong online versus offline. Yes.
Yeah, I actually have a question regarding the previous slide. Like it was about the 50% and 10% when it comes to carbon emission, and the 10%. So I actually want to ask, like, what can you say to those in the marginalized sectors that cannot afford eco-friendly products, and what can you say to those companies that provide these products the marginalized sectors use, such as small shampoo sachets that the marginalized sectors can afford?
Okay, So thank you so much, Dave, for that wonderful question. So basically, ayun nga, when we talk about the marginalized sectors and the companies, kung sino dapat yung nagbe-bear ng burden, it's not the marginalized people. Like, yes, we can tell them na kaya nating sabihin sa kanila na, oh, you guys should lessen your plastic pollutions and all of that. But that can only do so much kasi nga hindi talaga nila afford. So what we can talk about them more is the other aspect of it, which is waste management. Diba? So since ayun na talaga, hanggang dun lang yung kaya nilang bilhin, let's just ensure na the waste that they're producing do not go into the wrong places. So kunyari, imbes na itapon nila kung saan-saan, diba? Yun kaya na nilang gawin yun eh. Na they can do upcycling. They can do just, I don't know, basic waste segregation. These are things that they can actually do, okay? As opposed to the stop buying sachets and other wasteful products. Yung sa ganong aspect, that goes into the company's hands na. Okay, so when we talk to the companies, dapat sila na yung nagiging accountable doon sa issue na yon. So when we talk about the plastic wastes, di ba? Dapat yung companies sila na yung mag-bear ng burden na maghanap sila ng mas eco-friendly na alternatives to plastics or to sachets, di ba? And yes, that entails profit loss for them. Okay? But you know, we have this saying na people over profit. Na minsan, yes, ngayon nga medyo bababa ang profit mo, but you know, at the expense of the whole world dying, I don't know, like any person in the right mind should, diba, agree na, oh, okay, yeah, I think I should switch to eco-friendlier products para the earth doesn't die. Okay? And aside from that as well, if you look at it long term, diba, hindi rin naman siya profit loss for you. Okay? So, hindi nga ganun kabilis yung ROI when it comes to eco-friendly products and reusable products or yung mga refilling stations. Hindi mabilis yung ROI nun, yung return of investment nun. Pero, you know, in the end, like in the long run, it is actually a better option. And yeah, basically, that's the main idea. Hold the companies accountable for the sachet economy and for the people themselves na wala talaga silang choice kung hindi mag-subscribe dun sa ganong aspect nga, we look at it on the other side, which is the waste management. So upcycling and proper waste disposals. Okay? So going back, thank you so much, Dave, again. Yeah, when we talk about activities or acts, okay, what we can do for the environment, we look at it online versus offline, individual versus collective, and volunteerism versus activism. Okay? So for me personally, naka-bold, hindi siya ganun kahalata. Naka-bold yung mas gusto ko. Okay? The offline, collective, and activism. And actually, hindi ko lang siya mas gusto. Ito talaga yung mas kailangan nating bigyan ng pansin. Kasi, bakit? Because when we talk about climate justice, hindi siya ma-achieve ng online, individual, at ng volunteerism lang. Okay? So that's the main idea kung bakit mas important yung first. But, don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean na you only focus on offline collective activism. Okay? Because the problem there is, kapag puro offline lang tayo, ang dami nating nasasayang na opportunity to reach the people na nag-online. Diba? Around half of the world has social media accounts. So, sobrang dami sana ng ma-reach natin if we maximize both online and offline. Pero kung masyado tayong nakulong sa isipan na, dapat offline lang kasi if it's just online, it's not real, quote-unquote, real activism, diba? Mali yung ganong idea. Sayang yung maaabot natin sa online na ganap. And come on, it's a pandemic. We can't do things offline right now. Okay, and then the individual versus collective. Now, this is one of the things na lagi kong hina-highlight. Okay? Collective action is bigger at mas malaki yung ambag niya as opposed to individual. So, in-explain ko naman kanina in terms of the emissions and all of that kung bakit mas important yung collective action. Because you can't hold a company accountable as a person. Like me, I shout at ExxonMobil, I shout at Shell, and say na, you guys are polluting this earth. What are you going to do about it? Wala siyang magagawa masyado as opposed to kapag collective yan, so I talk with other people who have the same advocacies na yun nga, cutting down the global carbon emissions, mas malakas yung boses ng isang collective. But that doesn't mean na bibitawan mo ng individual actions. So yung kunyari, yun nga, yung paggamit mo ng eco-friendly products and all of that, hindi pwedeng mawala yon. Okay? Kasi we have to have cultural revolution as well. Okay? Kailangan, kapag, let's say, yun nga, yung mga companies na ito ay nag-cut nga sila in half, yung corporations, yung mga countries na biggest polluters, nagsabi na sila, okay, we're gonna cut our emissions in half. Yes, okay, that's a very big plus. And we can actually extend the deadline. But that deadline will come again kung tayo as individuals ay hindi rin natin gawin yung sariling part natin. So kung ako, like, okay, inaaway ko nga yung mga companies na masasama sa environment, pero ako mismo ay nagkakalat ako sa daan just cause, I don't know, walang trash can. So I'll just, I don't care. Instead na ibulsa ko, itatapon ko na lang. Diba? Yung mga ganung bagay, kung kaya naman natin gawin, why not? Okay? And then the last part of ACT is the volunteerism versus activism. So volunteerism is very important, okay? But it does not solve the problem. For example, Yolanda. So there are people na sinalanta ng Yolanda or any storm actually. So they need relief goods, okay? So sa ganung bagay, kapag nagbigay ka ng relief goods, that's a very, very good thing. And that's very important kasi where are they gonna get their food, where they're gonna get their clothes and everything else, diba? But kung hahayaan lang natin na puro volunteerism lang ang iniisip natin and we stop there, hindi na basically magbabago yung mundo na ginagalawan natin. The Filipino resiliency that we are talking about is not something to applaud, okay? It's something problematic. Ibig sabihin yan na ilang dekada, ilang century sa tayong binabagyo, bakit hanggang ngayon yung disaster risk management natin ay sobrang pangit pa rin? Diba? Bakit hindi enough yung pondo for relief goods na laging naghihintay pa ng private sectors and different corporate, different GOs to give out the relief goods? Okay? So sa activism, it solves the root of the problem. But volunteerism addresses the immediate need. So it goes hand in hand. Hindi pwedeng isa lang kasi mabagal ang activism, hindi siya instant, okay, I'll shout na ganito or I'll submit a position paper or a lobby sa Congress. Diba? It's not an immediate thing. Kaya important yung volunteerism, but you have to remember na it doesn't stop there. So basically, ayun naman yung mga bagay na kailangan nating isipin. So when the other speakers talk about specific actions, we have to remind ourselves, is this an online or an offline thing? Can this be both online and offline? Is this an individual or a collective thing? Can this be both? Is this a volunteerism thing or an activism thing? Can this be both? Okay? So to end, I want to end with this call. It's system change, not climate change. So ito very, what do you call this? Gas-gas. Or laging nung sinasabi, everyone siguro na climate activist, narinig nyo na itong sinabi nila itong system change, not climate change. This call is very important and maganda talaga siya na ma-instill sa atin na ito dapat talaga yung panawagan kasi ine-ensure niya na hindi tayo magsasettle lang sa individual actions. Kasi pag individual actions nga at hindi natin binago yung sistema, ay wala lang din. Okay, hindi natin maaabot yung deadline na binigay sa atin ng IPCC. But this call does not discredit those two. Kasi when we talk about system change, yes, the big system needs to be changed, but individual actions have to be changed as well. That's why cultural revolution is important when we talk about system change. So yeah, basically that is the talk for today. Hope you guys understood what we should do as the youth when we talk about climate justice. If you have any questions or concerns, I'll be glad to answer your questions. And if you guys have more questions after this, you can contact us at YACAP Philippines on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and sa aming email, yacapphilippines@gmail.com, and our website, yacap.org. And kung sa akin personally, you guys can message me on Twitter at Xian Guevarra _ or ca.guevarra@up.edu.ph. So yeah, thank you guys so much for listening, and I want to hear your questions if you guys have any.
There's a Thank you for the workshop. There's a few
ang dami palang questions sa chat.
For you. Yep.
Okay, sorry. Bakit hindi siya nag-notify? Weird Zoom. Okay, I will answer these questions. Hold on. Okay. Which is the first question? Dave, na-answer ko na yan. And then, okay, Summer has a question. it says here, in relation to Dave's question, what can marginalized... Okay, I think nasagot ko na to.
Yeah, you already answered it.
Okay,
Thank
thank you. Okay, Trixie asked, how do you think we can we efficiently engage or encourage our fellow young people to participate in environmental activities or advocacies? Okay, yeah, this is a very good question. How do we encourage people among all aspects of life, kahit hindi young people to? It's dapat mahanapan mo ng way kung paano nila actually na-feel yung effects ng climate change in their lives. Mahirap yon, okay? Pero kaya mo siyang hanapin. So for example, nag-tweet siya about, napakainit. Okay? It can start from that small thing na napakainit, and then kaya mo na siyang later on i-build up na, oh, this is the reason bakit sobrang init. And you don't do it directly. Na parang pag nag-tweet siya, i-message mo siya na, oh, that's actually because of climate change. That's gonna be weird, to be honest. Pero like, kaya mo yung gawing low-key in the sense na start sharing infographics, and then later on, mas makikita nila yung, oh, maybe that's why it's so hot in the Philippines. Okay? Mga ganung bagay. We have to bridge what they are currently experiencing to the issues that we are facing today. Okay? Kasi minsan, andun yung issue at nararamdaman nila, hindi lang nila alam na, oh, yung main reason pala kung bakit pala nangyayari to sa akin ay dahil sa climate change. Okay? And then, Ian asked a question. What do you suggest for us to do as youth and connecting organization and funds? Oh, okay. So when we are talking to organizations and agencies, tapos ang sabihin nila sa atin, or hindi nila tayo take seriously because we are just kids. I don't know. Working with, because right now, diba, ang focus ko nga is local organizing and international collaborations. Actually, they listen to us. Okay? Yung mga taong ganito siguro na magsasabi na, oh, you guys are just kids. These are the individuals, like people na matatanda na ayaw talagang makinig sa inyo. Yung sa ganitong bagay, we have to understand na people, hindi siya automatic na kapag, kunyari, I am a person na matanda ako, hindi automatic na kapag part ka ng generation na yon, ganito agad yung iniisip nila. So, baka mamaya tayo lang din yung takot na iniisip natin na, oh, they might not take us seriously. But what I want you to do is try at least. Okay? So, try contacting them, and then kapag na-feel mo na or sinabihan ka talaga directly na, oh, you guys are just kids, diba? So, hindi ka tinitake seriously sa ganon, find someone else. Because to be honest, the world is not hindi siya ganito na kapag sinabi mong boomer ka, automatic ganun na sila mag-isip. Okay, so makakahanap ka rin ng boomer na matino. Okay, I might be offending some people, but you guys know what I mean. Na hindi nga lahat, pag sinabi mong boomer ay negative person na agad siya. Okay, kung part ka ng generation na yon, meron pa rin sa kanila na okay lang din naman. For lack of a better term. But yeah, okay. Anushka asked, considering the anti-terror law, how do you suggest the youth gets involved with environmental activism and the defense of environmental defenders while still staying safe? Okay, this is a question I get asked a lot. Okay? Kasi mahirap nga. The Philippines is the second in the entire world na deadliest place for environmental defenders. So, kung ikaw, youth ka, at ikaw basically climate activist ka, there is a chance, to be honest, na itag ka rin as terrorist under the anti-terror law, and wala, pwede kang hulihin or, I don't know, something worse. Okay? But we have to remember na we have to let this fear be the fire to fuel us more. Okay? Kasi kapag, dahil sa takot na to, yes, may hirapan tayong mag-speak up sa mga bagay-bagay na ganito. But if we give into the fear, kapag di na tayo nagsalita about this at all, dahil yun nga, it's scary, ang daming issues na nangyayari sa Pilipinas, so baka mamaya madawit ka at matawag ka ring terrorist, you let them win. Okay, the anti-terrorism law, one of the main things that it does, the main points of it is to instill fear to people. Okay, so kapag tayo, hindi na tayo nagsalita about it, wala na, panalo na sila. Okay, so kung anong pwede natin gawin, ang dami-daming petitions online. Hopefully you guys signed those already. Or of course, patuloy lang din nating paingayin yung issue. Okay? Kasi ngayon, medyo nag-die down na siya. Ito yung problem with issues na malaki. Laging, boom, sobrang taas ng peak niya, sobrang ingay niya online and offline. Tapos after a while, it just dies down. Tapos wala na siya. Okay, so dapat continuous tayong nagre-release ng statements, nagre-release tayo ng, I don't know, basically inform other people about the dangers of the anti-terrorism law and kung bakit natin dapat dinedefend ang ating environmental defenders. Okay. Sabi ni Hannah, okay, I love it, having questions. How is the accountability of corporations realized? We know that percent of emissions, but how is that translated to what corporations have to do to be accountable? Okay, this is very exciting kasi sobrang, I don't know, to be honest, sobrang funny niya. School Strike for Climate in Australia. So, they're a group of people, climate activists, puro mga bata lang din. Hindi naman bata, but you know what I mean, youth, okay? They actually got Samsung to pull out of funding a coal-fired power plant there. Diba? So, what did they do? Wala, nag-ingay sila. It's both online and offline. Binombard nila yung corporation to say na, oh, you guys shouldn't do this. Okay? And then later on, after a couple of days, yun nga, Samsung actually backed out. And kung sa Pilipinas yan, ayokong pangunahan, but like, yeah, merong mga resolutions, of course, in the Philippines na nagsasabi na, oh, we actually have victories as well in the Philippines. Na meron tayong mga napigilan na corporations. So, example niyan is when we talk about mining. Okay, so that's a very, controversial issue, diba? When we talk about mining, of course, mining is not bad. Okay, mining is essential to everyone. But the problem is the current state of the mining in the Philippines isn't exactly that good. Okay, so every time na meron tayong mines na napapa-hold accountable, so basically ito yung kinakailangan nila magbayad basically dahil sa environmental damages nila sa indigenous peoples or sa peoples living in that area, doon natin nakukuha yung accountability from them as well. So, yeah. Yung sa what do they have to do to be accountable, they have to change their practices. They have to ensure na they stop funding bad energy or dirty energy. They have to stop incineration. They have to stop basically their bad practices. Even actually, kasama dyan yung labor issues. Okay? So, when you talk about climate justice, it's not different from social justice as well. Okay? So, ganun siya dapat na in all aspects, ayusin basically ng companies kung ano yung mga pamamalakad nila. Okay, and then Michaela asked, in line with Hannah's question, do you think activism through work more than activism through change of lifestyle and change of demand? What do you mean change of demand? Can you elaborate? Pero sige, I'll start answering while you are typing, Michaela. So, activism through words work more than activism to change of lifestyle. Okay. This is... Okay, I need the right word. When we say activism through words, is this... Ang ibig mong bang sabihin nito is like yun nga, shouting sa streets, doing petitions, making position papers, ganong bagay, versus individual change of lifestyle. So yun yung way mo. Kasi when we say activism, it's demanding for social change. So I don't know exactly, me personally in terms of definition, I don't think personal change of lifestyle is activism. Okay? I think between activism and volunteerism, that is more of a volunteerism thing in the sense that you are trying to donate or like help in what way you can currently to the planet Earth. As opposed to activism na yun nga, may hinuhold kang someone na accountable or you're actually wanting social change. Pero kung siguro, if you mean by this as well as you change, activism through change of lifestyle is yung pinapaintindi mo sa people na dapat magbago ng lifestyle, I don't think dapat, pagbanggain silang dalawa. Kasi important nga sila parehas. Okay? And iba kasi yung ina-address ng isa sa isa. Yung activism through words or yung petitions, mobilizations, and all of that, ang ina-address niya ay yung corporations, governments. Yung activism through change of lifestyle, ito naman yung sa individuals. So both are very, very necessary at hindi mo pwedeng iwan yung isa lang.
So yeah, thank you so much for your workshop. It was amazing.
All right. Thank you so much for Kim. And thank you guys so much for all of your questions. I will answer them through chat. And yeah, hopefully I can answer you guys through email or everything or something. I don't know. Thank you guys so much for having me. Yeah, hopefully you guys stay tuned for the next talks because they will be amazing as well. All right. Thank you guys so much.
Our next guest speaker is Charisse. She is the founder and executive director of Wayfarers. It's a youth environment organization that basically tries to educate the youth about environmental issues and empower them to take action. She's an environmental advocate, and she's been working on environmental projects such as, namely, talks and lobbying projects. And she's also won Best Presenter in a national research conference. So she's currently a sophomore at UP Diliman, and she's majoring in biology and plans to pursue medicine. So let's give her a warm welcome.
Okay, hi everyone. Wait, I'll just fix my share screen. Okay, thank you for that great introduction. Okay, so hi, I'm here to talk about what people forget about environmentalism. So before we begin, I would just like to say some reminders. So first, to stay hydrated. I'm going to be saying environment a lot in this talk. So every time I say environment or environmentalism or environmentalist, take a shot of water or coffee, whatever you guys want. And then second is share your thoughts, your responses, or questions in the chat or in the Facebook Live comments because I would want to see them. And also feel free to take a photo or a screenshot anytime and then post it in your social media because I would want to see them. Don't forget to tag. So yes, this you can connect with the Wayfarers or with me. You can hit me up anytime in these social media accounts. Okay, so first I would like to begin by asking you guys, are you guys familiar with this photo? It's a photo of a straw and a turtle's nose. Have you seen this before? Yes? No? Okay, so for the people so far, they've seen this photo before. So this photo, well, and it's from a video actually of a straw and a turtle's nose. It became viral in 2015 and it sparked a lot of people to become environmentally conscious. So the zero waste and sustainable lifestyle suddenly became popular and the pollution really became relevant for a lot of people at the time, including me. In grade 10, I searched more about plastic pollution for a research project, and they learned a lot about how much plastics were generating, how we're the third polluting country in terms of ocean plastic waste, and how there are five ocean jars filled with plastic, like the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And I wanted to do something about this issue. So as a result, so people have been becoming more sustainable with their lifestyle choices. So, but I want to do something. So I wanted to do my own way of doing something about this issue. So I founded Wavefarers. Our main project before was organizing and holding coastal cleanups with volunteers from whoever basically was willing to volunteer for a cleanup. But we realized that coastal cleanups, they're just band-aid solutions. We realized that we need long-term solutions for environmental issues. So we rebranded and we revised our mission and vision. So we now aim to tackle the root causes of environmental issues by raising awareness and educating and empowering the youth to take action. So with this, we also kept three important things in mind about the kind of environmentalism that we practice and uphold. The first one is multidisciplinary. I came upon this post by an organization that I follow, and I saw the comments saying, why is this organization suddenly becoming political? I followed this because it's an environmental organization. Why are they saying statements about this and that? Like, it shouldn't be political. And I was so disappointed and I felt so sad because environmental issues are very, very political. They're very, very political because environmental issues, they are interconnected with our culture, economy, politics, history, and society. environmentalism is multidisciplinary. If you only look at one aspect, we can tend to ignore or disregard the others. And we should not do that. We need to have a general understanding of how the world works. So going back to this photo of the turtle, this photo prompted thousands or maybe millions of people to buy metal straws. And it's amazing how many people began caring about the waste that they generate. But we should also remember the resources that we are using. When something isn't, metal straws, sorry. And when something isn't plastic, it's usually glass or metal. And in this case, it's metal. It is extracted by mining companies that destroy hectares of forests, displace our indigenous people, and pollute everywhere. Although, like Kuya Xian said a while ago, mining is not necessarily bad since we do need minerals in our lives. But mining companies in our country, they can't really be trusted because they often disregard the environment. And so we should be more deliberate about our actions, not because the responsibility should solely fall on us, the consumers, but the responsibility for the environment falls both on us and the corporations and the government. We should speak out and reach out to these people with power and position since most of the responsibility falls on them, like Kuya Xian said a while ago. But we should also be deliberate with our actions because how we act will influence how they will act. And you will also need to know the causes that we are fighting for are actually and genuinely pro-environment. Environmental concepts are also not black and white. It's not, okay, metal is better than plastic. Oh, plastic is better than metal. No, it's not like that. For example, okay, hydro flask. So this hydro flask is made of metal, but I use it throughout the day so often that I am able to maximize it and offset the negative impact of extracting this metal and producing this flask. No, this is not sponsored by Hydro Flask. And then this metal straw, I only use straws once in a while. I don't use it enough to be able to maximize and balance out its negative environmental impact. So it won't be smart. It won't be sustainable if I buy one. Although this one was actually gifted to me, so I still try to use it as much as I can. Yes, guys, I have props. So acknowledging that environmentalism is multidisciplinary can greatly help you know what to fight for and how to take action. Before in Wayfarers, we used to be just dealing with the symptoms. We weren't really addressing the sickness, but we learned and understood more about the different facets of environmentalism. So now we strive for projects with sustainable long-term solutions for the planet and the people. Which brings me to my next point, intersectionality. Now, what is intersectionality? So this is when environmental activism and social justice are put together. It is acknowledging that race, color, social class, gender, and other social stratifications, they play a huge role on how vulnerable we are to environmental issues, like the climate crisis, also known as climate change. We are the biggest victims, and okay, on a global scale, we are all affected, but some countries are a lot more vulnerable compared to other countries. Now, this is a map and a table. It shows that from 1999 to 2018, these countries were and still are the most vulnerable to climate-related disasters and events. And most of these countries have low or lower middle income. And look, it's sadly, it's not a list we would want to be on, but sadly we're there. So when the climate crisis worsens, we will be hit the hardest. So it's all the more reason to speak out and take action because our future depends on it. When advocating for the environment, we should not take social justice out of the equation. There is always a human aspect in environmental issues, and we should not disregard that. Yes, take a stand against mining companies that ignore environmental policies, but don't forget to fight for the indigenous people whose land was stolen from them. Yes, speak out against reclamation projects, but don't forget to fight for the fisher folk whose livelihoods will be greatly affected as they depend on our natural resources. Just go campaign for zero waste and sustainable culture, but don't forget to include low-income communities who can't afford to purchase reusable items, as they mentioned a while ago, and people with disabilities or disorders who can't use metal straws or glass items because it'll be too dangerous or too risky. In Wayfarers, our environmentalism places people like you at the core of our desire to act. So when we were organizing our July webinar about biodiversity and conservation, we didn't want to just inform people about these two topics. We didn't want to just mention science. We also worked towards shedding light on how these two topics affect marginalized people, specifically the fisher folk. So we always aim to connect the environment to the community, most especially the youth, towards environmental justice, because we need the world where people and the environment go hand in hand, and not only one of them at the expense of the other, if that makes sense. Okay, so can I just say that being an environmentalist is very hard, especially as a member of the youth. So while I'm drinking, can you guys share what you guys struggle with the most with being an environmentalist, whether it's personal or social? Like, I just want to hear from you guys, so your struggles, because some might be able to relate. Okay. Okay, wala pa nang reply sa. Ayun, okay. Reducing the use of plastic straws. Oops, okay. So being an environmentalist is hard, and that's why I think environmentalism should be encouraging. But how do we make it, encouraging? Trying to reduce waste in general. I can relate to that, actually. So first is to have science communication. Well, first, environmental concepts, they can be complicated and they can sound foreign. A sad reality is that not everyone might care, but the important thing is we can get them to care. And that's what science communication can do. It's important to have people to be able to relate to environmental issues. So my tip is don't sound smart. Sound credible, but not smart. I saw this tweet before that mentioned how 3 trillion tons of ice melted in the past 25 years. And okay, I understand the impact, and I wanted to share it to my Twitter account. But I was aware we have a different audience. My audience might not understand what this means. So I quoted it and said, okay, if numbers about ice are indifferent to you, then just imagine 140 million human people losing their livelihoods, being forced to move because their homes are now submerged in water from the melted ice. Can you imagine 140 million human beings? That's a lot. That's insane. That's the entire Philippine population plus this population of Spain combined. Imagine your family, your friends, you, me, the people important in your life losing their homes and just having their lives changed because of this. So that's one tip to get people to care with a really complex topic such as climate crisis. It's important to have facts and use science, but make sure that people understand what these numbers and what these data mean. Because it's in our nature as human beings to just care more about things that we can relate to. Now, another tip is to use imagery. There was a time wherein people were talking about the recession and how people are falling into poverty here in the Philippines deeper than before. And I was really concerned. But when I saw these photos, it really hit me. It's different when you see something than when you read about it. So I loved these photos by Jilson Chu. He took photos of Filipinos, and it just contextualized what it means when Filipinos are living in poverty. So it really makes an impact when you show them instead of tell them. Now, another way to make environmentalism more encouraging is to have a positive environment. And no, I don't mean toxic positivity saying, everything will be all right, everything will be okay, let's just work together. No, I don't mean that. I mean, nowadays, it's so easy to criticize and cancel people nowadays. You can do it by a button, like retweeting. So I think it's important that we should acknowledge that we are all learning and we will always continue to learn. I'm still learning. I'm very well aware of that. I have a lot to learn. So it's very pressuring for people to call themselves environmentalists because they can get backlash. Someone can say, I saw you using a plastic bag at the mall. You call yourself an environmentalist? That's bad. Like, that's such a hypocrite thing to do. And I understand, like, people, it can get scary to call yourself an environmentalist because of people like that. So I just want to mention a story with my friend Xian. Back in high school, we were talking about metal straws. I was pro metal straw, and he was against. And I was saying, oh, it's good for the environment. You're reducing your plastic waste. And he was saying, no, it's not. It's not sustainable. You're using up so much resources. There are carbon emissions, and etc. And the thing is, he wasn't fighting me. He genuinely wanted me to learn. He was just nice. He didn't say, chat, you're so stupid, you're so dumb. That's not environmentalism. No, he didn't say that. And because of that, because of how encouraging he was, I was more open to changing my mind and to admitting that I was wrong. I think that's an environment that we should create, not just in environmentalism, but in society in general, with politics and everything. So as environmentalists, we should not put ourselves on a pedestal and look down on others. We should not gatekeep environmentalism. Now, the important question is, what can you do? Well, luckily, there are a lot of things that you can do. First was mentioned by Kuya Xian, and that photo is from YACAP. So first is participate in petitions and mobilizations. Someone raised a concern that, okay, speaking out is a scary thing to do, especially with our political climate. And I just want to reassure you that the bigger we are in numbers, the stronger we will be, and the louder our voice will be. And there might be some people who doubt the how effective petitions and mobilizations are. And I just want to assure you that they can be really effective. I talked with the founder, I think, of Step Philippines, and she was saying how they started petitions against the cutting down of trees and the construction of an ocean park in Cebu, and they were successful because they spoke out, because they worked together. They were able to stop so many trees from being cut down just to make the road wider and to stop the construction of an ocean park, not another place for our animals to just be trapped in. And then next is, well, not all of you might have an organization, so I suggest join an organization. It's a great way to find a great support system and a great community where you can learn and be exposed to different environmental stuff. Now, this is a screenshot of an orientation night and a game night that I had with Wavefarers. It was really nice. So I really suggest that you join an organization. There are so many out there. Just pick the ones that you feel like you belong in, where your advocacy fits. And I also want to invite you guys to join Community. It's Wavefarers Facebook community. It's a safe space for environmental advocates like you who want to just talk about any environmental topic, whether it's serious, whether it's a vogue, whether it's just casual. And every week we post certain topics. Like for this week, we had the exotic trade and exotic pet trade. And, there's just discussion and discourse. And yeah, you can sign up to be part of the community in bit.ly/community. Yes, plug. And yes. So we also post opportunities there, like workshops and webinars. So I think that's also another tip. You can just seize the day and just join workshops and talks. So to you ambassadors, good job, guys, for taking a huge step by joining this ambassador program by Project Swap. Like, I'm so proud of you. Yes, go out there and make a huge impact. And to the other people who are watching, who are not part of the ambassador program, good job also for taking the time out of your day, especially this late in the night, to learn more about different environmental topics. And yeah, and if you responsibly consume information. It can be through news articles, through the traditional media, and just make sure that you watch out for fake news. Just be responsible. And if you want a database or a collection of links to news articles, journal articles, different kinds of sources about environment-related topics, you can go to our Zotero database. My friend, one of our Wayfarers research committee members, Sofia Pulido, I love you. She made this. Just go to bit.ly/Wayfarers Zotero, and you can just access the links there. And some of the sources that we use for our posts are also there. And then last is to encourage and to educate. I believe that environmentalism should be for everyone, no matter where you come from, no matter who you are. So I hope that you pass on what you know, because knowledge is meant to be shared. And I trust that you guys will be amazing at passing on and applying what you will learn from this series of talks. So to every single one of you, I am excited to have you guys be part of sparking waves of change in your circles and in your communities. So thank you so much for having me. And if you want to hit Wayfarers or me up, just go here. So yes, thank you again to all of you and to Project Swap for this night. Yay.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for your workshop. If you have questions, just feel free to type it in the chat. You can also unmute your mic and ask questions. You can also otherwise you can message them maybe on their social media, or you can email them. So yeah. So the rest of this time will be open to a question and answer panel session between Charisse and our ambassadors. So yeah.
Okay, so there's a question from Dave. Did I just answer it?
Yep, go ahead.
So aside from awareness, how do you encourage the marginalized communities to actually practice eco-friendly ways when they're already burdened of thinking about waste and producing enough money for their daily living? Okay, I like this question because it tackles intersectional environmentalism. You know how the zero waste and sustainable movement was more for people who have the income to buy reusable items. So for marginalized communities, we shouldn't expect them to change into eco-friendly ways because, like Xian mentioned, there's a sachet economy. So I think for that, the responsibility should mostly fall on the corporations because they do have the money, they do have the resources to transition into materials and production processes that are more eco-friendly. So we can't really blame them we can't blame the marginalized communities for not having the income to transition to eco-friendly ways because they're already having a hard time with their day-to-day lives. So we can't really demand that, hey, you should also, transition to a zero waste lifestyle and just reduce your waste. So for that, I think if you're asking also for what we can do about it is to support these marginalized communities. You can reach out to their local government units and also at the same time demand accountability from our companies. Like, I should not mention, for the companies who just put the profit over people. So yeah. If you have follow-up questions, you can just send them.
Our next guest speaker. So we're going to be having teacher Ada from Upcycle Philippines. And I'll be introducing her at 9:25. So stay tuned.
What do we know about Upcycle and what do we want to know about this? And thank you so much for answering the Mentimeter, because tonight I'm going to share with you your answers. Let me just share my screen. Okay. And I hope can you see the screen now? And can you see your answers? Yeah? Okay, so these are your answers. And you mentioned that Upcycle for you is repurposing. It's about zero waste. It's about saving, reprocessing. It's creative reuse. It's actually one of the most popular definitions for upcycle. It also means reprocessed. It's a way to manage our wastes, to give value to things we otherwise want to throw away. It's about changing, transforming, and making use of our renewable energy. Yes. And it's about tapping our creativity and innovations, or our innovation, innovativeness. And it's also looking into the usefulness of a product. Thank you so much. Awesome answers. Okay. And another way to maybe encourage, if you're going to present something similar like this to your own communities, I'm going to present to you some ways how to maybe engage your audience already. So we have the Mentimeter first, since I love using, those online digital tools. And then let's shift now to something more conventional. Okay, let me just share with you my PowerPoint. Okay, so here it is. Let me just share with you. Okay, so here, earlier you answered what you know about upcycle. Sorry about that. Now, I want to know what you want to know tonight about upcycle. Maybe you can just type it in the chat box, yeah? And then later on, we will discuss what you want to know about upcycle, because tonight we're going to talk about the facets of upcycle, and I am here and I'm glad to share with you what I know about it. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. First, let's talk about the definition of upcycle. What is it exactly? Well, we have Rainer Pils, and he's a German engineer, and he said that recycling, he calls it actually downcycling, because in downcycling, they smash bricks, they smash everything. What we need is upcycling, where old products are given more value, not less. So upcycling is not a term I came up with. It has a legit modern history, and it's actually from a book. It's actually a title of a book by Gunther Pauli. He's the Steve Jobs of sustainability and the founder of Zero Waste Initiative, or ZERI. And upcycling is the German title of his English book called Upsizing: The Road to Zero Emissions, More Jobs, More Income, and No Pollution. And from the title itself, you probably can have the idea that it's something about conserving environment's resources. Yeah, and then moving forward, the term upcycle is elaborated in the book by German chemist Michael Braungart and American designer William McDonough in their book Cradle to Cradle: Remaking the Way We Make Things. If you get hold of a copy of this book, you'll find this book interesting, because the book is not actually made from paper; it's actually synthetic paper and it was developed by Melcher Industries. But I'm not going to delve further into that because it's going to be a lengthy discussion. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of upcycle today and how it's going to be an effective way to save our environment. Anyway, as I've read Cradle to Cradle, here are my key takeaways. Number one, we take nature as model. Nature is our model for making things. And number two, design products that will provide nourishment for something new. Number three, upcycle assists in achieving a circular economy. Well, it actually achieves circularity, because after a product's useful life, they can be conceived as a biological nutrient. As such, they nourish the soil instead of leaching toxic substances. Or it can also be used as a technical nutrient, where the products will re-enter or circulate in the system as pure and valuable materials, thus closing the recycling loop. And number four, I hope you know that there is a difference between downcycle and upcycle, and we will discuss that later. And the last one is the last takeaway from the book is that Upcycle is a system for zero waste, and as such, it aims to alter consumer attitudes, reuse things that we have already, and it also helps us observe eco-effectiveness. And in this key takeaway, we put eco-effectiveness into practice. We can't tolerate less bad actions. We aim for zero waste, zero emissions, and zero ecological footprint, and that's possible with Upcycle. Okay, so now let's go to the difference between downcycle and upcycle. According to McDonough and Braungart in their book, downcycle is also known as recycle. And if we look at the pictures here in the presentation on your left, we have the quality writing paper, and once they're used, you submit them in a recycling facility, then they transform it into photocopying papers, and then the fibers are used for cardboard for packaging. Then once used again, you submit them to recycling facilities, and the fibers are used to make tissue paper. So as you've noticed, the value and the quality of the product decreases when you recycle or downcycle a product. Same goes with coffee cup, the one you get from your coffee shops, from your favorite coffee shops. Once they're recycled, the fibers are used to make cardboards for packaging. Okay, so when we say upcycle, let's just briefly summarize. Upcycle gives life to old products, while recycle breaks down products. And in upcycle, the original form of the product is maintained, while in recycle, the change of the inherent property of products, often quality, is degraded. So in this case, we have this eco luggage, which I'm going to show you later how upcycle takes place. Yeah. So you have the materials used for this eco luggage. Later, I'm going to show you the diagram. And then this is for recycle, where shredded plastics are used. Okay, and another summary for upcycle and downcycle. For upcycle, you convert low quality or low value materials into high value products. And for downcycle, you convert valuable products into low value materials, low value raw materials rather. For upcycle, you close the loop. You reuse and purchase products made from recycled ones. And for open loop recycling, that's for downcycling. It may delay the trip to the landfill, but this system does not entirely eliminate plastics. Here, okay, so we've been hearing a lot about that downcycle and upcycle, but in fact, if we practice pre-cycle, we can avoid things going to the landfill, because first of all, pre-cycle is the practice of consuming while keeping waste reduction in mind. It's actually the unsung cousin of recycling. It's the preventive medicine for the landfills, and it encourages mindful consumerism. Beautiful. And then the next thing I'd like to highlight about upcycle is that it builds communities, like what I did. I gathered people who engage in DIY upcycle. How did I start with this advocacy? Okay. I used to teach in Singapore for 3 years. And when I came back, I realized I had a lot of stuff good for, let's say 3 women or 3 ladies to use. And then when I came back, I got married, I had a child right after. And so I started to declutter, because I realized that my daughter has to have a fair share of the material world. So when I decluttered my stuff, there's a pile that goes to charities, there's a pile for selling, and there's a pile to be thrown away. But then I realized, why do I need to throw these away? Can't I make use of them? So I searched Google, searched Pinterest, and came across useful blogs, articles, and sites how to repurpose denim pants in particular, or makeup. And then I came across the term upcycle, and the rest is history. So first I had a Facebook page, but then I I decided to gather people who are interested in upcycle, and then I'm pleased to share with you that that I've also met people who are interested in studying about upcycle that's backed up by science. Yeah. So here's the logo of my page. It's called Upcycle Philippines. When I built this page, it used to be called Amore Crafts, because Amore is the name of my daughter, and I dedicated the page to her because I believe that she deserves a greener and cleaner environment. But then someone told me to be consistent with the advocacy, with the name of the advocacy. So I changed the name of the page to Upcycle Philippines, so that if people would not like to join the group, at least they can see the events, or at least they see the content in your Facebook page. So it's also a matter of reaching out to people, how you strategize your advocacy. I mean, how you strategize how you strategize your way to reach out to many people or to many organizations. Okay, so as I've mentioned earlier, Upcycle participates in a circular economy, and this is circular economy at play. This was taken. Okay, let me just minimize this. Okay, this is the diagram or the illustration of the eco luggage. Okay, let me just discuss it. First, you have the separation of materials, and then the biological components that are no longer useful are separated from the rest of the luggage. You also have the biological degradation compost. Well, the components will be broken down at a local municipality composting site. The non-toxic biodyes are used on the fabric, and thread would naturally decompose as well without harm on the environment. And then there are biological nutrients. The bionutrients returned back to the soil would provide food for new seeds to germinate in certified forests and fields, ensuring the fair trade and quality of living of the people working in the farm. So it's not only about the material, you also have to include the welfare of the people working working nearby. And then there's transformation. Once you harvest the hemp goes through the process of transformation to create thread and other products, construction products, or food for humans or animals. And the hemp thread is used and processed to create a fine fabric, and the bamboo is cleaned and prepared for assembly. Then the rest of the materials are transported so that they can already come up. They can already create the eco luggage, or they can already produce the eco luggage. So it straight away goes to production. As you see, the green broken arrow goes to production. Once all the nutrients are collected, the production and assembly of the luggage is made in certified fabrics. Then you have the distribution. The finished product is distributed to the stores in flat package. I'm not so sure what flat package is, but it's probably a box, and perhaps it would be ethical or eco-friendly as well. Then the good thing about this is the aluminum, steel, and other components are returned by the in exchange for a discount bond. So there's, the burden is lessened among consumers. Then, of course, there are technical nutrients. The components that are still useful goes directly to form part to a new product. The rest goes to recycling process. And then there's recycle, because there are other things that can be, that cannot be used for the eco luggage. So that's circularity at play there. So here's a question for you. As you design and create, what will happen next? Are you gonna consider throwing it away? Are you gonna have the consumers repurpose your product? Are you gonna have your consumers return the products to your factories and make use of them into building another product? So that's what you consider when you create a new product, and that's according to William McDonough and Michael Braungart. And then you should also include additionality, and this is the feature that gives more than it takes, for example, this lampshade. Okay, if you take down all the can tabs, the soda can tabs, you can reuse the can tabs for another purpose. If you take out the soda can itself, you can reuse it for another purpose, maybe a toy or something else. And then the base, you can use it for another, art piece and for another functional material. Yeah. And for a large scale project, you have the greenhouses of Netherlands, and this is where circularity takes place also, because they also take into consideration that there's hydroponics inside. Then these greenhouses also provide heat to other buildings nearby, and that's an additionality feature that we're talking about here. And then when you upcycle, you want to ask yourself, what are the things that should go and not go back in circulation? What do you want people to upcycle? What do you want people to reuse or repurpose? And if they repurpose this, is it going to be good for their health? If you repurpose this, is it going to be good for the environment? So upcycle encourages living side by side. That's the fourth facet. Side by side nature, actually not from nature. Okay, because the goal of upcycling is to design and manufacture in a way that loves children, that loves all children of all species for all time. So based on that, we have to consider, we have to consider if the materials are good for the health of the people, the materials are good for the environment. And with these points, they remind me about this cradle to cradle certification, which it's actually a globally recognized measure of safer, more sustainable production for circular economy. Okay, it helps to ensure for material health. For material health, products are made using chemicals that are safe as possible for humans and the environment. And then for material reutilization, it aims to eliminate concept of waste by helping to ensure products remain in perpetual cycles of use and reuse one product to the next. And then when you say renewable energy and carbon management, it helps to ensure products are manufactured using renewable energy so that the impact of greenhouse gases is eliminated. And then you have water stewardship, because water is a valuable resource, and we should protect our watersheds so that, and then we should also consider that there should be clean water available to all. So it does not mean that just because we can upcycle, we can upcycle doesn't mean that we have to make use of make use of the raw materials. Actually, we also have to think if we're going to use water, is it going to affect other communities? Is it going to affect our environment? And then I've been thinking about this upcycle. This picture, it's actually Nigel Topping, and he's the CEO of We Mean Business. I'd like to share this with you. And he says that if you don't create a product that's healthy, you cannot upcycle it into another product that is healthy. So we have to make sure that upcycle is holistic. And it's actually a call to manufacturers, because we want to lessen the burden we want to lessen the burden of the consumers. Yeah. And your values that we learn from upcycle, it's revolutionary, because now it turns the tables. It calls on every manufacturers to rethink their design. It lessens the burdens on the consumers on what to do with the materials that we have. And then it's hopeful, actually. We've been clamoring for zero waste environment, for cleaner and greener environment, but it won't actually work if there's flawed design on the products that we use. And then upcycle also facilitates mindful consumerism because it also it does not also call on it does not only call on manufacturers to rethink their products, but it also calls on the consumers to participate in a mindful in mindful consumerism, because we want the manufacturers to know that we want a cleaner and greener environment, especially for the younger generation. I'm still considered part of the youth, yeah. So anyway, I've been pondering on a Filipino term for upcycle because, after all, we're based in the Philippines, and well, I'm glad to share with you that this might be a pioneering group of people interested in upcycle here in the Philippines. So I've been pondering on a Filipino term for upcycle. You can just quote me if you want to use this. So definitely we cannot Filipinize the term because there's no such thing as upcycle. How do I say it? Basta yung tinagalog yung upcycle. But we can find probably a related word. And I chose the word aluyan, which means pinagmulan or sinilangan, because upcycle draws from the cradle-to-cradle framework where people should create things that will endure, but not dangerous, and nothing is going to be ever wasted or thrown away, as there is no away. And cradle-to-cradle products have no expiration. They serve as perpetual nourishments to the earth. Yeah. So here are references if you want to check them out. Yeah, but they're mostly the images and where I've gotten the insights. Upcycle. Of course, feel free to connect with me here via Facebook or my Gmail or Instagram. Again, thank you very much, Project Swap, for this opportunity to talk about cycle. And yes, let's be hopeful, okay? It's not toxic positivity, but let's be hopeful that we can make the world a greener place to live in, because there are different ways to make the world a better place to live in, especially for the younger generations, because we can just be proactive and look for many ways, for positive ways to do this or to make this happen. Thanks so much.
Thank you for the workshop. Also, we'd like to open it up for any questions, concerns. Also, if Ada could share us these slides, we can send it to our ambassadors so they can join like the Upcycle Philippines group if they want to. Also contact Upcycle Philippines if they have any questions after this workshop. But right now, we'll be opening it to a question and answer session. So if anyone's interested, so anyone has a question, just either unmute yourself or type a question in. So yeah, thank you so much for your workshop.
No problem. Thank you also. What can you say about the Filipinized term for upcycle? Is it apt? Is it appropriate that I relate it to aluyan, which is pinagmulan? Maybe you can also come up with with something that's language related, with upcycle that's language related, because it's an entirely foreign concept. Even zero waste. I know this is rather technical because maybe we've known upcycle as at the DIY level, but as I've mentioned earlier, if you want to move it up, if you want to make a large scale upcycle project, you have to look into material health, How's it going to be effective and eco-effective in the long run? How is it going to be, beneficial to our society and to the environment? Thank you so much, Kit Kat. And her question is, since there are recycling plants, are there such things as upcycle plants or upcycling plants? I'm trying to figure out if there are larger scale upcycling institutions we can support or highlight. Thanks for that question. And in fact, I've only met people who are into the level of upcycle DIY. Maybe we can ask the Department of Science and Technology who can assist us in identifying upcycle plants, because a long upcycle, if we want to repurpose or reuse something, if we want to prolong the life of an object, we have to take into consideration material health and how's it going to affect the environment in general. So the best person or the best agency to ask is the Department of Science and Technology, and I hope and I'm sure they would probably assist you on that.
Hi, I'm just going to be reading questions from Facebook Live.
Sure.
So this is a question from Jaewon Chang, someone who actually goes to the high school I graduated from. So he said, what kind of advice would you give for students interested in starting an environmental organization during COVID-19?
Thank you so much for that question. The best, I think the one you should study right now is how can we get the trash or PPE waste, medical wastes that go into the oceans or that are thrown away in the oceans during the COVID, because I believe there is an increasing number of medical wastes that are dumped into our landfills or into the oceans, and we have to look into better alternatives, or best alternative how to reduce or mitigate medical wastes during the pandemic. And if there is an eco-friendly medical equipment for that, how is it going to be helpful? How is it going to be, tested by people who can actually test them? How can they be medical grade? How can they be used in medical facilities? Because that's our concern, right?
Okay, awesome. So, sorry. Yep. This is another question from Jason and I from the swap team. So we agree that like localizing the term upcycle is a really good like campaign to promote, especially like in like making it a habit and normalizing upcycling in local Filipino communities. So we just like to ask like, what are some other ways of outreach to promote upcycling like that you recommend, and like especially like the most effective ones?
Thank you so much. Well, according to Gunter Pauli, upcycle will actually work in rural areas. And then if we want to explore upcycle for communities, maybe we can start with DIY upcycle. And then, as I've mentioned earlier, Gunter Pauli also promotes upcycle that fosters livelihood programs for communities. So you can look into that as well. And how can you start with DIY upcycle for these communities?
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. So also someone Aldrin from our swap team also has another question. He'd like to ask, based on your experience, can you share some details on how you get people excited and engaged with upcycling? And also like what strategies have you found most effective in making people care about this, like especially like among like youth activists and like within the context of like youth activism in the Philippines?
Thank you so much for the question. With the group of people who engage in upcycle that I came up with, they share their different DIY upcycle activities or their upcycle artworks, and through that I piqued the interest of people who are interested in upcycle. But we are still at the tip of the iceberg. We are still looking at upcycle as DIY. But if you actually that's why we're pushing forward this advocacy on upcycle, because it's a system that will save our environment. We want to identify what materials we want to put back to the system or we want to circulate. And we want to foster we want to foster the spirit, the activeness of the youth to promote the advocacy on upcycle, because it is a hopeful system to conserve our resources. It facilitates hopefulness, it facilitates creativity, it fosters community building, because it calls on every manufacturers, and of course the manufacturers will also tap the consumers to to demand from the manufacturers that they need actually a better and greener environment. It's a large term to embrace, but if we study and if we understand what upcycle is really about, then and really thank you so much for the initiative to come up with upcycle with this upcycling advocacy, because I believe that this is a system that will save the environment.
Awesome, thank you so much. So we'll be happy to open the floor for maybe one or two more questions. Otherwise, if you you can just type it in the Zoom chat, or you can unmute your mic. Otherwise, you can just contact maybe the Upcycle Philippines group, Upcycle Philippines page, or if Ada, if you could give your email, that would also be awesome.
Surely.
Yep. Okay, so we'll just open the floor for one or two more questions.
Let me just add something, by the way, to Aldrian's question. He asks, what strategies have you found most effective in making people care about this, especially within the context of youth activism in the Philippines? If you demonstrate what you're doing, and if you're enjoying carrying out your advocacy, then people will be attracted to what you do. I'm a mom, and it has been a difficult journey for me to maintain a zero waste or a low impact lifestyle, because of course I have to feed my daughter, and once in a while she wears diapers, but we started with cloth diapers, and she's breastfed, so there are no bottles, there's no formula milk. What else? And she's homeschooled. So she's homeschooled right now because of the pandemic, but she used to go to a school before. And as long as you demonstrate to the youth, as long as you are receptive as well to their questions, to their needs, then you pique their interest, you attract them to follow you. What else? You contact them, you get in touch with them, you be personal with them, you talk to them about their desires, what their plans are, what their future will look like with the greener environment. So I think that for me worked effectively, so that I can send the message across that, okay, we have to build a greener environment.
Awesome, thank you so much. So I guess let's make that the last question in the interest of time. Thank you so much for your workshop. It was really technical, and it provided lots of insightful details, just not only for ambassadors, but also for us, the SWAP team. I think it's really good. It's going to be a really good resource for us going forward. And we really appreciate you taking the time, and also to all our other guest resource workshop speakers to take the time and talk about what they're passionate about in this workshop session. So yeah, thank you so much.
My pleasure, really as always. Thank you also.
Yep. Okay, and so for now that this concludes the guest speaker workshops, and so we'll be staying on this call for around 10 minutes afterwards. If you for ambassadors, if you'd like to ask any questions about the guidebook assignment we talked about in our last meeting, or also if our guest speakers would like, they can stay around and answer any questions ambassadors may have. So yeah, so Jason, I think this should conclude the Facebook Live. Thank you so much for coming to the Facebook Live, and also to our ambassadors for attending these workshops. So yeah. Oh, and sorry, we'll make the rooms open actually till 10:20 p.m. So the SWAP team will be staying